Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel, Nnedi. Today I'm going to talk about my most anticipated book releases over the next couple of months in April, May, and June. These are not all of the releases that I have my eye on over the next quarter of the year, but they are the ones that made the cut for this list. And I think I have 14 titles to talk about, which means this may be a long video, so let's get into it. Let's begin with the two books from April that I'm most looking forward to. The first one is Amnesty by Lara Elena Donnelly, the third book in the Amberlow dossier series that began with Amberlow and Armistice. I'm a little ashamed to say I still haven't read Armistice. I have a copy, I have no excuse, I just haven't made time for it yet. But I loved the first book and I think I'm going to love the continuation of the series. I don't want to read the description of Amnesty because I haven't read the second book, I don't want to spoil myself for anything. But basically, revolution in the city of Amberlow, it's fantastic. And surprising absolutely nobody, the next book in April that I'm really looking forward to is Atlas Alone by Emma Newman, the new Planetfall Universe novel. I'm also going to skip the description of this one because I think it actually gives away some of the major events that happen in the other books. It takes place after the events of all of the other books, actually, I think, or maybe concurrent with Before Mars. I've loved all the books in this series, and I've done standalone reviews for all the previous novels as well in case you're interested in that. The really short snippet from this I can read is that Newman returns to the captivating Planetfall universe with a novel about vengeance and a woman deciding if she can become a murderer to save the future of humanity. Atlas Alone is the one book I'm considering breaking my book buying ban for. It comes out in April. I'm technically not supposed to buy books until May. I think I'm gonna bend the rules a little bit for this one. And now moving on to May. The first one I want to mention here is another one of those most anticipated books of the entire year, up there with Atlas Alone, and that is Exhalation, Stories by Chiang. This is Chiang's very, extremely long-awaited second short story collection. He's not a prolific short story writer, but like everything he does is so worth waiting for. I loved his first and only collection for many years called Stories of Your Life and Others. The title story of that was Story of Your Life, and it was adapted into the movie Arrival, which I also loved. So yeah, Exhalation is coming out in May. I've had this one pre-ordered already for many months and I will devour it as soon as I get it. I have read a couple of the stories in it already, but I think there are a few in here that I've just never gotten around to reading yet. Next on my list in May are The Buying of Lot 37 and Who's a Good Boy by Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Cranor. These are volumes 3 and 4 in the collected scripts of the Welcome to Night Vale podcast episodes. I am a huge Welcome to Night Vale fan, and I have the first 2 volumes of these scripts that I really enjoyed reading, just being able to revisit the podcast episodes in a different way. And I think that these next 2 volumes will be the same thing with like introductory material for each episode and lots of illustrations, which just makes it a little bit more special. Now we're on to a bunch of the sequels. First up is Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which is the sequel to Children of Time, and that book is one of my favorite Clark Award winners ever. So the description of this is, thousands of years ago, Earth's terraforming program took to the stars. On the world they called Nod, scientists discovered alien life, but it was their mission to overwrite it with the memory of Earth. Then humanity's great empire fell and the program's decisions were lost to time. Eons later, humanity and its new spider allies detected fragmentary radio signals between the stars. They dispatched an exploration vessel, hoping to find cousins from old Earth. But those ancient terraformers woke something on Nod better left undisturbed. This sounds like my type of science fiction. I still can't believe that I am so excited about a story that contains a spider civilization. I'm a huge arachnophobe, but the spiders were some of my favorite parts of Children of Time, and I'm super excited that we're getting like the continued adventures of humans and their new spider allies, and AI and terraforming and maybe some creepy stuff. Oh yeah. And then we have The Red-Stained Wings by Elizabeth Bear, which is the sequel to The Stone and the Skull that came out in 2017, I think. That's the beginning of a new fantasy series from Bear. and I still haven't read The Stone and the Skull. That doesn't stop me from being excited for the sequel, because I think I'm going to really, really enjoy the series. But once again, I'm ashamed for not being so up on my reading as I should be. But yeah, I'm also gonna skip the description for this one because I haven't read the first book. I really love the covers of these though. I just find the cover design and the typography on them to be really intriguing for some reason. So yeah, another sequel to get eventually. Next up is a book that is just strange sounding. I'm going to butcher trying to explain what this is. It is Lent by Jo Walton, and it says this is a magical reimagining of the man, Girolamo Savonarola, who remade 15th century Florence in all its astonishing strangeness. So as far as I know, Savonarola was a real person, and this is Walton's fantasy take on his life and his abilities. I think the character can like see demons, and his life is a series of miracles and improbable events that he somehow succeeds at. So really, I've been intrigued about what this is and what it will feel like. I heard Walton read an excerpt from it at Worldcon in San Jose, and it really did seem strange but interesting. I don't know how to describe it well. And the first book from June that I am looking forward to is The Deep by Rivers Solomon. And I think this is either inspired by or a novelization of Clipping's song, The Deep. The cover that I saw says it's written by Solomon with the members of Clipping. So the description says, Yetu holds the memories of her people, water-dwelling descendants of pregnant African slave women thrown overboard by slave owners, who live idyllic lives in the deep. Their past, too traumatic to be remembered regularly, is forgotten by everyone, save one, the historian. This demanding role has been bestowed on Yetu. She flees to the surface, escaping the memories, the expectations, and the responsibilities, and discovers a world her people left behind long ago. I am intrigued for two reasons by this book. The first one is that I read Solomon's debut novel, An Unkindness of Ghosts, and thought it was a little flawed, but incredibly promising, and I've really wanted to read more of Solomon's work since then. And the second thing is, this is like inspired by a science fiction or fantasy song, basically, and that is really different. So I'm not sure if this is something I will actually like or not, but I'm gonna try it. Next up on my list in June is Unravelling by Karen Lord. This one I need to make time for. I haven't read anything by Lord since I read her debut novel, I think it was, Redemption in Indigo, years ago. But Unravelling is a standalone fantasy novel. I love hearing standalone. And it says, in this novel, the dark truth behind a string of unusual murders leads to an otherworldly exploration of spirits, myth, and memory, steeped in Caribbean storytelling. It could be very different from what I usually read in fantasy, and honestly, I just need to read more by Karen Lord, and the fact that she's from the Caribbean and incorporates that into her stories, I need this diversity in my life. Finally, a nonfiction book has made it to my anticipated list. This next one is Hacking the Code of Life, How Gene Editing Will Rewrite Our Futures by Nessa Carey. It's been a little while since I read something on genetics, but if you don't know, I really love reading about genetics, and I've read Nessa Carey's two previous books, The Epigenetics Revolution and Junk DNA, and I really enjoyed both of them. I think she has a slightly more technical approach to genetics and explaining things than is normal in popular science books on the topic, and that's what I really want. So I have been looking forward to whatever she writes next, and I'm so happy that the topic of this one is gene editing and CRISPR. The last book on the subject I read was A Crack in Creation by Jennifer Doudna, which was about her team's discovery of CRISPR and the ethical questions that that has brought up. So I'm really curious what Nessa Carey has to say about this, and just to get back to reading about one of my favorite topics. Next up is The Lesson by Cadwell Turnbull. I first heard about this book from Thomas over at SFF 180. He's already done an entire review of it, and I will try to remember to link that if you're interested. He made it sound very interesting and worth checking out. So here's a bit from the publisher's description. An alien ship rests over Water Island. For 5 years, the people of the US Virgin Islands have lived with the Nnedi, a race of super advanced aliens on a research mission they will not fully disclose. They are benevolent in many ways, but meet any act of aggression with disproportional wrath. This has led to a strained relationship between the Nnedi and the local Virgin Islanders, and a peace that cannot last. And then it sounds like everything goes to hell in a handbasket. And yeah, it just sounds very interesting, and I believe it's a debut novel, and it sounds very much worth checking out. Next on my list is Broken Places and Outer Spaces by Nnedi Okorafor. And the description here says, Okorafor takes the reader on a journey from her hospital bed deep into her memories, from her painful first experiences with racism as a child in Chicago, to her powerful visits to her parents' hometown in Nigeria. From Frida Kahlo to Mary Shelley, she examines great artists and writers who have pushed through their limitations using hardship to fuel their work. Through these compelling stories and her own, Okorafor reveals a universal truth. What we perceive as limitations have the potential to become our greatest strengths, far greater than when we were unbroken. So this kind of jumped out at me from nowhere. I had no idea that Okorafor had basically an essay or a nonfiction book coming out. And I think it might be a bit of an adaptation of a TED Talk that she gave. And I realized that while I have read a bunch of books by Okorafor that I have really liked and really appreciated, I don't know much about her as a person, and this sounds like it will be a very interesting read. Only 2 more to go on this very long list. Next up is Empress of Forever by Max Gladstone. I am perpetually underread when it comes to Gladstone. I am abysmally behind on his craft sequence, but Empress of Forever seems to either be a standalone science fiction novel or the beginning of a new series, so yay. And this is just the bit of the description that immediately piqued my interest. A magnificent work of vivid imagination and universe-spanning action, Empress of Forever is a feminist Guardians of the Galaxy crossed with Star Wars and spiced with the sensibility and spirit of Iain M. Banks and William Gibson. I'm sold. And lastly, but definitely not least, in June, I am looking forward to Hex Arcade Stories by Yoon Lee. This is a collection of short stories set in the world of Nine Fox Gambit, or the Machineries of Empire series. It takes you to the very beginnings of the Hexarchate's history and reveals new, never-before-seen stories. I'm just hoping that at least one of these stories is about Mikades, because I need more Mikades in my life. And lastly, I wanted to leave you with a quick list of some other things that I've had my eye on, but which didn't make the cut for the big list. So really quickly here in chronological order, The Adventures of Alexander von Humboldt by Andrea Wolf and Lillian Melcher. This is, I believe, a graphic novel biography of the adventures of Alexander von Humboldt, possibly for a younger audience. I'm intrigued. I loved Wolf's biography of Humboldt called The Invention of Nature. Then there is Finder by Suzanne Palmer, Walking to Aldebaran by Adrian Tchaikovsky, Longer by Michael Blumlein, Maresi Red Mantle by Maria Turchaninoff. This is a translated young adult fantasy novel, I believe. I can never find the translator's name. They don't publicize that well. Then Stealing Worlds by Carl Schroeder, and lastly, Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh. There are so many things coming out, I will never be able to read them all in a timely fashion, and yet I will try. So let me know if any of these are also ones that you are looking forward to. Leave me some comments down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back to talk to you again soon, and until then, bye.